Today we're jumping into a story from our Entitledpeople. Imagine the sop finds out their neighbor has been sneaking into their backyard and using their pool without even asking. This one comes from Robin with a Y, and the ending will leave you shocked. A few years ago, my husband and I purchased a house with a pool. Now, we're acquainted with most of our neighbors, but definitely not close friends with any of them. They all seem nice, but we all just don't have much in common other than where we live. The neighbors next door to the right is a family of 6. Twin daughters attending the local university, a high school-age son, and a young elementary school-age daughter, maybe first or second grade, and then the parents. Now, normally we open our pool in May and closing in October, but this year, our weather was off, and we had a very cool and very wet month of May. And then June went straight to 100 temperatures. So, because of this, we haven't had our pool opened yet this year. Normally, we go to the family lake house for a week during each of the 3 major holidays. But we didn't go for Memorial Day because there was flooding around the lake this year. Now, several times in June, the little girl next door has seen either my husband or myself outside. And she's asked us when we're going to open the pool. We first told her maybe later, but yesterday she asked, and I said, we're probably just not going to open it this year. And she started crying. Now, we've never had any of the neighbors over to use our pools. So I didn't understand why she was crying over us not opening our pool. Well, I spoke with the neighbors on our left. And apparently our neighbors on the right have been having a small family party at our pool every 4th of July when we're gone. They've always cleaned up really well afterwards. And because we have scheduled pool maintenance and weekly yard service, occasionally things are moved around in our yard, and we never thought much about it. The neighbor on the left thought that we had given the other neighbors permission to use our pool. We did give them permission to retrieve any balls or toys that ended up in our yard, but never permission to use our pool, especially when we're not at home. We have a special latch on the gate, and my husband did show the neighbor how to open the gate to retrieve his kids' toys. So now, my husband, who loves gadgets, is going to have several more cameras installed around the exterior of our house, covering the gate and pool area, and change the gate latch so that we can grant remote access for the pool service and yardmen. Down in the comments, we have this story from Sergeant Joe. I had this problem. When I left town, I put up a warning sign that stated the pool was being chemically treated and it was dangerous. Of course, I did no such thing. All I did was put up a sign. One day, I got a call from an emergency room because someone snuck into the pool and claimed they were injured by the chemicals. I told the doctor they were faking it, as the only thing I did was put up a sign. Our next Reddit post is from Arents. I moved out of my parents' house last year. My parents have kept my childhood bedroom as it was with all my old toys, belongings, clothes, etc. Because I go home to visit most weekends and help around the house. This includes some collector edition Barbies and dolls that my dad bought for me when I was younger. I keep them in their boxers stored on a high shelf. There's about 10 dolls, some of which are collector's items now because of their age and condition. I haven't thought about selling them because I just like keeping things my dad bought for me. I guess I have attachment to them because he worked in the US while we lived in Canada without him, and toys were given when he visited us. This past weekend, I was visiting my mom and she brought some of her friends over. One particularly entitled friend, Jane, brought her 5-year-old granddaughter. I told my mom not to let the child up in my room after a bad experience with kids, taking my belongings and breaking them. I stayed downstairs and worked in a room. Eventually, I heard Jane taking the granddaughter upstairs. I then heard them opening doors and talking. I didn't go upstairs until I heard her say something about dolls. I went upstairs and asked them both to leave my room. But Jane was already in my closet at this point, pointing at the dolls. Of course, she pointed at the boxes of Barbies. She pulled one off, showed it to her granddaughter, and told me she wanted to play with it. When I told her, no, it's in a box for a reason, she seemed irritated at me and handed the box back to me. She left my room, and the child started crying, saying she wanted to play with the dolls. I went through my things, found some of the dolls that I'd opened as a kid and played with, and offered them to her downstairs, but she kept insisting on the princess doll. They didn't go back upstairs but it left me a little anxious now about my room. My mom is telling me to put a lock on my door because Jane visits often and tends to wander around. But I'm baffled that she would go into someone's house and think it's okay to touch their stuff. I'm from a South Asian background, by the way, and this tends to be the attitude of some of the older women. They don't understand collectible culture or sentimentality to gifts. They think they're able to do whatever they want or open whatever they want. Our next Reddit post is from UK. I'm a 38-year-old man and I've been married to Mike, who's 35 for 3 years. Together for 12 years. We're very quiet, nerdy, net-roving guys, not into flashy displays or drama at all. This was at the tail end of the pandemic, and since the borders were partially open, we decided to road trip to Gibraltar and Alope. The pandemic was a great excuse not to invite anyone to our wedding and just do what we wanted. When we told our lesbian friends, DY, who's 45, and Anne, who's 60, what we were doing, they decided on the spot that we were going to have a double wedding, and they immediately started taking over, suggesting a bunch of trashy, expensive things we didn't want. This is the story of how they attempted to ruin our wedding, but they only ruined theirs. 1. We initially decided that we'd get a rental car together and split it 4 ways, with Mike and I splitting the driving. A month before the wedding, DY and Ann decided it'd be cheaper to take the train. Well, 6 trains. Actually, across 3 countries. I immediately said no, and it turned out that DY didn't even have her driver's license, and she'd been driving illegally for years. Mike offered to do all the driving if they split the rental car with us. They declined because it was too expensive and took the train instead. Obviously, it went terribly for them. Trains were canceled, tickets were lost, and they missed out on the entire night in Gibraltar because they were stuck at a random train station in the Spanish countryside. Mike and I had a wonderful road trip and spent a magical night in an Airbnb in Cartagena on the way. Their train tickets cost more than half the rental car. 2. We initially agreed to get a really fancy Airbnb in Gibraltar with a hot tub and all that stuff. Split 4 ways! We could get something really nice. Well, Anne decided she wanted a real hotel and pulled out of the Airbnb plan. I found a gorgeous little 1-bedroom place for us with a hot tub and a view of the sea. DY and Anne forgot to book a real hotel and ended up in a freaking awful place by the ports, like a place for merchant sailors to crash while they're in port. It was on a busy roundabout opposite a Burger King. There was no bath, no balcony, and it was basic AF. It was more expensive than our lovely place. They got no sleep because of the drunk sailors and the traffic noise. They didn't even get any towels provided. 3. The night before the wedding, we met for dinner. They'd barely been in Gibraltar for 2 hours, whereas we'd been relaxing since the day before. At dinner, things were tense, but DY was really trying. At some point, she signaled to the restaurant host, and the lady came over with a super fancy VIP bucket with champagne on ice. The waitress popped the cork and gave it to Di, who handed it to Anne, saying, "Just like the one I gave you in New York, baby." It was clearly supposed to be a romantic moment. Anne refused the cork, and we all smiled nervously to try to smooth things over. The host poured 2 glasses of the champagne and gave the glasses to Di and Anne. Anne took a sip and immediately spat it out, announcing it's seeked. We all tried the champagne and told her that it was delicious, and insisted the champagne was seeked and loudly announced they wouldn't be paying for it. The host was pissed, and I understood why. When she told us that it was a 750 pounds bottle, she threatened to call the police, so Di sheepishly paid for it and sulked the rest of the night. I was so embarrassed, and our whole evening was spoiled. When we got back to our Airbnb to take a bubble bath and eat Hoffa cakes, I told Mike there was no way I was going to allow them to ruin another minute of our trip. But if they wanted to ruin theirs, that wasn't my problem. 4. The actual weddings went off, okay? Apart from the fact that they were still drunk from the night before, the registry office was nice, and I married the man of my dreams. Afterwards, we bought them brunch to soak up the booze and faithfully walked them around the park, taking lovely photos of them. Di had a finger over the lens of every picture she took of us. When we were done, they suggested we all go to the pub and get wasted. As if we dropped them off at the pub and went our separate ways. I was honest and just told them I want to be alone with my husband. They couldn't really argue with that. 5. The wedding dinner. Mike, DY, and I all wanted casual restaurant for the wedding dinner, but it insisted on a fine dining fish restaurant that didn't even serve dessert. I outright refused. I don't eat fish at all. And Anne was insisting on the fish restaurant, so we decided not to meet up. Anne also tried to convince us to chip in $200 for a custom wedding cake to get delivered to the restaurant, but we all said, hell no! Mike and I went to the best steakhouse in Japan. I had a 1.2 kilo steak and an amazing cheesecake for dessert. We had a lovely time, and the waitstaff went out of their way to spoil us. Around 8 p.m., they messaged us. Where are you? And we ignored the message as it turns out, and forgot to make reservations, and the fish restaurant was fully booked. But they couldn't leave to go somewhere else because they had to wait for the cake to be delivered. They ended up taking the cake back to their awful hotel and eating it with their credit cards because they didn't even have cutlery and plates in their room. They got hammered that night on supermarket vodka. Mike and I had the perfect evening. We got a taxi home, smoked weed on our balcony, watched the stars, and kissed for hours. 6. The next day, Mike and I set out for a day of hiking in the UNESCO World Heritage Site National Park. It was the best day ever. Mike got robbed and bitten by a monkey, which was effing hilarious. We ate a full English breakfast in the Sky Restaurant and explored St. Michael's Cave. We made unforgettable memories while DY and Anne decided that it was Jabraler's fault and spontaneously decided to leave. They booked a beach resort up the coast somewhere in Spain and hit it on foot to the train station. The trains were all messed up and they got stranded somewhere in Spain with all their luggage, and it took them 14 hours to get to the resort. They arrived at 11 p.m. and were checking out the next morning. Mike and I spent a few more nights enjoying our honeymoon and then road tripped home. We stayed in the same little place in Cartagena on the way back, and the host threw us a little surprise party. It was magical. DY and Ann got stranded again on the way home. Lost half their luggage and caught CO. So our friends ruined their wedding, but not ours. Honestly, they may have actually improved OP's wedding because the one thing better than a perfect wedding is a good story. Our next Reddit post is from Demo. We've got a good group of friends and we camp together every year for Labor Day. 7 adults, 4 kids, 3 cars. We pay extra for the third car and we're under the per person maximum per site. Reservations open up 11 months in advance. We book the same large site every year 11 months in advance. This is hands down the best site in the campground. Pull through for the camper off by itself. Huge space. Set off from the road facing the woods. It is an A+ site. Some of the other sites are much smaller. I was the first to arrive at the campground at about 9 p.m. Friday night. Every site is full, except for one, and it isn't ours. It's the next site over, and it's a site that clearly cannot fit a 32 FT trailer. We kinda live in Methel out here, and this trailer was probably made in the 80s. So I'm pretty nervous when I go up to knock on the door. I immediately drop my best Oklahoma accent and go full Southern lady. I'm terribly sorry to bother y'all, but here's my reservation email. I think y'all are in my site. Oh, no. This is the site that we booked. Well, ma'am, would you all mind if I looked at your reservation email? If they double booked us, we'll figure it out. Oh, let me find the email. They close the door. I wait 10 minutes. They don't pop out. I go ahead and call the ranger. They'll be here in 30 minutes. I wait 10 more minutes and knock on their door again. Were y'all able to find that email? Well, do we go to their website? No, it should be in your email. Well, what do you want us to do? We have kids asleep in here. Ma'am, my kids are asleep in my car, so I get it. We won't fit into the other site. If we can't get into this one, we won't have a space to sleep tonight. They still can't find the email. My friend finally pulls up with a trailer, and the ranger came right after. Magically, they somehow find the email. They're supposed to be on the tiny campsite. They're now appealing to the ranger. Oh, we're supposed to leave tomorrow morning. Can't we just stay here? It's so much work to back in a trailer for just one night. Okay, I can compromise. We'll find somewhere else tonight if you can be out by 7 a.m. tomorrow so that we can get in. How about 11 o'clock? That's checkout time. Nope. This is our site. We'll be nice. But we've got a full day tomorrow and we need to be set up by 8 a.m. That's so early. We have kids, but I guess we can be out by then. The ranger sees right through the potential drama that would happen at 7 a.m. the next morning and says, "No, you need to go ahead and move tonight. But we have sleeping kids." The ranger points to me. "So does she. You need to move." Much cussing and grumbling. But they finally move their RV. Takes them a solid 45 minutes to get slotted into that microscopic site. And here we are, Sunday afternoon. And there are loud kids, and there are off-leash rat dogs are still in the site next door. The sites are fairly well spaced, so at least it's muted by the trees. Yesterday morning, one of the kids screams, "Why aren't we in the nice site anymore?" The mom then screams back, "Well, those people over there took our site." "You should have booked earlier, my friends." Normally, we cook more food than we can eat and share with our neighbors. Nope, no steak for you. I think the ranger has definitely seen this rodeo before. That was our entitled parents. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single